Hello everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in hopefully about 10 minutes. So because we're waiting for Mr. Mobile, the Michael Fisher, or the other way around, Michael Fisher, the Mr. Mobile, yeah, to join us. He's running a tiny bit late. So in the meantime, we figured why not answer some questions? So instead of doing it at the end, we're going to do a couple at the beginning. Should probably test my microphone whilst we wait as well. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Oh, that's the wrong mic. Everyone is using the wrong mic. How do I change that? Oh crap! Can you still hear me, Dan?
Yeah.
Man, I'm on the wrong mic. How though? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Do I sound better?
Does sound better.
Yeah. I was on my internal Surface Studio mic.
Oh, it doesn't sound terrible. It's doable.
It's good to know. Testing. Okay, it should be fine. Testing 1 2.
Did I pick the sticker winners? Yes. I'll be notifying you hopefully today or tomorrow. But yeah, I have the list.
Testing. Woohoo, I was a winner twice. I got 2 in the box.
That's true.
Anyone figure out how to get notifications on peak mode on the Duo? This is a great question. So notifications are not showing up on my peak mode. Are they doing it for you yet?
Yep.
How? I don't understand. I've tried everything.
Yeah. No one knows. No one knows the secret. But I mean, I don't know if you can kind of see it.
It's gone off.
Oh, turn off. Let's see. We're in 2. All right, there we go. I don't know.
It's hard to see. I did get my Duo, yes.
Are we really not getting Surface Laptop 4 this fall? That's what Zach hears.
Yeah, so originally they were going to do all of that had coronavirus not happened and all of that good stuff. We'll talk about it in the show as well. But had there been no pandemic and had the economy not suffered considerably, then yes, we would have very likely had the Pro 8 Laptop 4 and even the Studio 3 this fall. But because of everything that's happened, they've decided to postpone them, push them back to early next year, and focused on just a couple of releases this fall. So we have the Pro X2, or whatever they're going to call it, the new Pro X, which is a minor upgrade, and obviously Surface Sparty, which is a 12.5-inch Surface laptop. And I think that's going to be the big seller this fall because it's a good PR move. It's a cheaper laptop aimed at education. People who have less money now are able to afford this still, which is good. It's the right move. There'll be some accessories as well, but it's not going to be a big event. I don't even think it'll be an event. I think it'll be a press release.
That's fine, because all I care about, actually, I'm very excited about Sparty, but of course, all I really care about is the Pro X Gen 2.
I know you do.
I'm going to review the hell out of that.
Would you get it in platinum?
It's actually, my job gets very stressed when Microsoft is just like, dumps a pile of like 4 surfaces at my feet and like, there you go, review them all. It's like, I mean, I know most people would be like, yeah, but it's like the idea of sitting down and writing like 3,000 to 5,000 word reviews for all those. And then of course, everybody wants me to do a video too. It's overwhelming and I have other things to review. So I'm actually kind of happy with this. It's going to be easier for me. Did it surprise you about the durability? We'll talk about that in the podcast. Yeah. But yeah.
Will we see a new File Explorer in 21H2 or earlier? I don't think so. I think on classic desktop, no. It's just the old File Explorer is just too rooted in too many things to go away. They might update its UI, but I don't think we're going to get a complete rebuild like we are on Windows 10X.
Can you call Fisher on Skype?
Do I have his number? I don't. Can you text me his username? Or can you add him? I think you should be able to add him to our call.
Yeah, I got his email. I'll give it to you. His private email is
m.f@gmail. That'd be such an amazing email. m.f@gmail.com.
You got the link.
Where did you send it? Sorry.
Telegram.
Okay. Sorry, there's so many communication platforms these days. I don't know where things go.
MSN Messenger.
Bring it back.
Trillion.
Say hi, I guess. Waved.
Are we going to cover Duo's updates? Yes, of course. Just like the Windows Phone. I mean, we're going to cover the hell out of Duo. It's like my favorite thing to review and talk about right now. So, yeah, I mean, as soon as that's why I've been covering when new apps get updated or all sorts of stuff. But yeah, as soon as there's updates or any significant changes, we'll be doing. Not only will announce it, we'll try to do follow-ups with Zach or myself on video showing what's improved and all that. We have, in fact, I would actually say if you want the best Surface Duo coverage, it's going to be Windows Central, Android Central.
Wow.
Wow.
Bold claim.
No, it's. I'm 100% confident in that. That's nothing against Android Central. They're just, first of all, we have 3 devices. They have 1.
Yeah.
And they have other Android phones to cover. So.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Zach. Zach is using a device that could record or broadcast this call. I didn't know what I was signing up for here. You know?
You are live, so please watch your language.
Oh, man. You are very smart to have told me that. I am operating at the fringes of my capabilities. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Good to see you.
How are you?
You know, I'm about to have my first sip of pumpkin spice latte of the season. So better
There
than
you
you,
go.
I imagine.
I'm all about the pumpkin stuff.
Oh,
Let me send out the tweet. If anyone wants to retweet, you can go ahead. Michael, all we ask is you record locally.
doing it already. How about that?
Okay, and then we'll do the clap down thing.
Very
Zach,
good.
are you ready?
I am ready. I'm now recording.
All right, I am. Hold on. Turn down my volume. I am now recording too. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 196 for September 18th, 2020. Of course, as I do. Oh my God! All my notifications. That's all of your to-do stuff is coming through on my computer right now. All I want to access is the Focus Assistant. I can't do it. All right, there we go. Let's forget that just happened. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast. I'm Daniel Rubino, joined by Zach Bowden. And this week we got all sorts of exciting things, including the Mr. Mobile, or just Mr. Mobile. We don't really know, but also known as Michael Fisher. And he'll be talking about Surface Duo. He reviewed it, of course, as well on September 10th. Encourage you to go watch his video on YouTube, which his videos are always super entertaining. Yeah, well, you hear this compliment all the time, and the joke is you could review a bar of soap and we'd all watch it, and just to hear that narration.
And
so
then complain about it on Reddit. Yes, thank you.
Well, you're really taking that personally.
I am not. I'm taking a note out of your book, man. It's a water off a duck's back.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I do hate people. It's a well-known joke. At Windows Central. It's why I'm so good at my job. Anyway, we will be talking about all sorts of things this podcast, including Surface Duo, the untold history of Andromeda, which was an exclusive story done by Zach Bowden, talking about the history leading up to Surface Duo. Windows 10 20H2 has been announced, and we know it's coming, and we'll go into details about that. Xbox versus PlayStation, we finally have the pricing story, although it gets murky when you get into the details, which we will. And then we'll talk about some other stuff, including TikTok, and then we'll do your questions at the end of the podcast. Let's jump into it because Fisher is on a time constraint here. He's a very busy man. Michael, let's talk about Surface Duo.
Let's.
You were... I don't want to say you were harsher. Oh, you were a little bit more critical than my review, but your review, my review, Android Central were all pretty much on the same page, I think. And I think all the reviews pretty much agreed on this. I thought there was amazing consistency here. We all agreed the hardware was really nice, ahead of its time, kind of groundbreaking. The specs, we know the spec story. They're not the latest and all that. And that's obviously a hit. But the software was sort of the real thing that everybody kind of got hung up on. And then I'll say, but the bottom line conclusion was everybody kind of wants to see a version 2 of this device. That is the fundamental theory of Surface Duo. It's not a gimmick. There was something there. So I'm curious if you can kind of go through those and share your thoughts on what you thought.
As you know, I mean, specs are never my thing. I think I said right in the video, I'm like, listen, if you've been watching my videos forever, I'm not a spec nerd. I carried a BlackBerry Key 2 for almost a year as a daily driver. You know what I mean? It's not about the silicon for me. It's not about what's under the hood. It's about the end result of what the device delivers. But I will say this. There was a column I used to run at Pocket Now back when I wrote for them called Empty Nest. And it was a column all about what happened when I had to give a review device back or otherwise spend some time without a review device that I had been carrying. And I kind of miss doing it because there's a lot you learn when you have to give back a device or when you have to focus on other ones for a while. And I have been missing the Duo since I moved on to the 3 devices I've had to cover since I used it. Mostly that's been, for Kindle or for being out and wanting to keep an eye on my Grubhub delivery while I'm doing something else. But I really am looking forward to moving back into it. And I mean that. But I'm not looking forward to doing that until there's the first software update. And I think I was coming on hoping to ask Zach, actually, since he's newer to the device and hadn't had it by last week's episode, how his experience has been specifically with the software so far. Because you're right, Rubino, we all love the hardware. I don't think there's any, aside from the fingerprint sensor falling off on some people's units, I don't think there's been anything wrong with the thing.
I didn't hear that. That's true. Some people...
Yeah, it was just the top layer, I think. I don't think it was a functional thing. I think it was a coding thing. But yeah, and maybe the discoloration on the buttons. But I love the hardware so hard. So yeah, Zach, can you tell me, not to be the guest host, but can I just hear from Zach about software for a second?
Sure. So I've actually not had a terrible experience with the software. Don't get me wrong, it is buggy, and I can see where reviewers were going when they were saying that this thing is not ready for the general public and all of that good stuff. Swiping up sometimes doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Orientation-wise, it doesn't always know which way it's facing and stuff. I've totally seen those issues. Some of those issues can sort of be rectified, or there are workarounds for them, however. One of them, which I immediately turned on, was auto-rotate. I turned it off, rather. Turning off auto-rotate seems to fix a lot of problems that this device has, especially around orientation. Turning auto-rotate off, the device sort of just knows how to display things more often now, so that's sort of a good thing to do. And also with the swipe-up gesture, I saw this on Reddit, and Dan mentioned it to me as well. If you go into, where is it? If we go into System and Gestures, there's an option to double-tap to dismiss. If you turn that off, for some reason, the gesture works better. So
interesting.
There are clearly some issues around the software, but there are workarounds for it. And Microsoft has committed to 3 years of updates. So, at some point, this device will get good enough to be something that you can recommend to people. But then again, are you going to recommend it with the camera that it's got and the lack of wireless charging of 5G and stuff? That's another conversation entirely. Yeah. But regarding the software, I've not been entirely frustrated.
Good. All right, I'm going to tell you this. That does not matter if you consider this device in the right light, because I think that's the thing that really cheeses me off. Is like my objection is with the execution. My objection is with those software issues and the fact that it seemed to me totally avoidable if they hadn't pushed the device up, because this just feels like a device that was launched 2 months so early, which I think it is. Yeah. So just dumb move. I don't think I'm so frustrated by that. You get into 5G, NFC, wireless charging, fine. The camera especially. Yeah, if you're talking about using it as your primary phone, those are issues that people should definitely be aware of. But Microsoft has never said that you should use this as your primary phone. It's not designed for that. You guys covered that extensively last week. Any reviewer who's reviewing the device in its proper context, I think, already accepts those things. So I'm a little barbed about it because I've spent the last week having words put in my mouth on Twitter and so that. It was like, well, if you just don't understand the concepts. Like, no, I understand and like the concept. I'm Captain Two Phones. I like carrying more than one device. It just needs to work, and it doesn't work right. Right. So that's my thing.
You raised a good point regarding why they released it early. I've been asking around about this, and nobody can give me a real answer as to why they decided it was good enough to release now. I think it's a combination of different things. One, this product, as we'll talk about later in the show, has been in the works for years. This form factor is something Microsoft has wanted to get out the door since at least 2016, and every time they've had the chance, they've not been able to do it because of software-related issues. I think the mindset may have been, let's just get it out the door, because if we don't get it out the door now, it's never going out the door. And
Sure.
them committing to 3 years of updates and sort of pushing it out the door to the public kind of puts them in their place in that we have to get this done. This has to be fixed in time for Duo 2 and stuff. So I think maybe
Skin
that's
in
one
the
of the
game,
reasons.
right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think some of this is also their internal testing. They don't seem to be up as on par as the rest of people using this device. And I think maybe they were just like, yeah, it's fine. We don't really have issues. And that's why they were so confident in kind of releasing it, giving it to reviewers, putting it into Best Buy stores. And I think they kind of overestimated that and what people would find. And I feel like some of that's just a learning curve with them. They are really new to this. And while you're right that the hardware has been in development for a very long time, the story around how it got to Android is actually a new one. It's not like they've been sitting on this for 3 years with Android.
Right.
Android, as far as we know, really didn't start in earnest until late 2018, early 2019, maybe. And so they're still like, let's face it, what Android 10 is doing here is not meant for Android. That wasn't it wasn't meant to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so they're having to sort of shoehorn it in there and get it to work. And, I think that's been kind of a problem for them. I do say, though, I feel like a lot of the software issues are things that it's tweakable, right? And that's what it feels like.
Yes.
They just need to tweak stuff versus like scrap everything. So
I totally agree. We saw that in our review period when we got that update, which, for a while looked like it maybe wasn't coming. And then we got the launch day update halfway through the review period. And oh my God, I mean, as reviewers, we've come to be skeptical about the update promise. Because it's always with a phone from every manufacturer. It's like, well, the camera kind of sucks, but they say they can fix it in an update, and then the updates never really fix it, right? So it's like I've noticed that there. It is so it's like when we got this update, I was like, I'm not really sure that this is actually going to do anything, and then 30% or 40% of the biggest issues I had with that earlier build were fixed. So that's why I'm pretty excited about this October update or whenever it's planned for. And maybe you guys can tell us all when we can expect the next update. I don't know, but these updates, this thing was so undercooked, is still undercooked, but much less so. So I'm thinking the next update and the one after it are going to be really critical to figuring out how well this device is actually going to age.
Yeah, and I think as well, I don't know how many reviewers sort of mention this, but at least to me, this feels very much like a bare bones release when it comes to the software, not including the bugs, just from a feature perspective. Our Xbox editor, Jez Corden, was very quick to mention there's no customization options. I can move icons around and that's it. It's like an iPhone. And I agree, for an Android device, this has very little customization to it. You can't change the icons and stuff. You can't, change the accent color of things like in the Action Center or whatever it's called, the Quick Actions area in the Notification Center. It is missing a lot of that sort of nice add-ons to Android that most Android phones have. And I assume Microsoft is planning to add all of this back in the future because the Microsoft launcher has all of those features on other phones. But on this device, it doesn't. They've seemingly stripped it back to its bare bones form. And I guess planning to introduce things very slowly over time. I don't know why, because it's the same launcher across both, but Microsoft has made that weird decision.
Right, but it's customized, right? It's customized for the two canvases, so it makes all the sense in the world. Again, that if they were originally working on a December timetable, say, it's like, well, we'll get to add that, and then they didn't because they had to launch. Yeah. Oh, it's so crazy. Can I ask? Have you guys been getting a lot of questions, as I have, how the Duo compares to the Galaxy Z Fold 2? Because that's all people wanted to know.
And I always say that it's. I don't think it's fair to compare them because although they are both considered foldables, and I get that, they both serve a different purpose. Like the Galaxy Fold, in my opinion, is a foldable tablet that can fold into a phone. The
Yes.
Surface Duo is a foldable phone that folds into a second phone because the screens are two phone-sized screens. The Galaxy Fold, I have a Galaxy Fold 1 here. I was using it since January until I moved to the Duo. This is a foldable tablet. It's one big screen, which means the apps that you use on it are sort of blown up phone apps. Very few apps take advantage of the big 7 point whatever inch screen there is on the Galaxy Fold. And I've seen in the reviews for the Fold 2, apps like Instagram still do a terrible job at expanding on the big screen. You don't really
That's
have that
Instagram for
issue
you.
on the Duo. The Duo, when you open up Instagram or any app, it just opens as if it was on a normal phone. And I think that's the beauty of the dual screen setup compared to the foldable screen setup. Both have their benefits and disadvantages, of course, but that's my 2 cents on the situation there.
I'm still, I will stand for foldables for a second because, or, full screen foldables, because I do like having the option of spanning an entire app. Sorry, wrong terminology, of expanding an entire app to that big canvas and not having the seam. It's like when you do Gmail on the Duo, Gmail has no idea the seam is there. So it's just kind of janky. But I didn't expect to like the dual screen approach that Microsoft has implemented as much as I did when it does work. Like, the Outlook thing where you've got your emails on the left and the body of the email on the right, and the news thing, which you guys just ran a story about yesterday, you ran an ICYMI yesterday, but I guess you ran that story earlier about the interns who made the Microsoft News app. And like clicking a link and having it pop open in the other window, like there's all kinds of stuff that is genuinely great and really awesome in theory, and I look forward to seeing it implemented in practice. Though I still think in 2 generations, we're gonna have a foldable Duo because you can do all that with an art. Yes, well, no. I mean, you're probably right. Yeah. I'm just saying you could, because you can make that seem artificially in software, and you can dismiss it when you don't want it. You don't.
Yeah,
have to,
but so
what?
Microsoft's because Microsoft's research on this, and I kind of believe them on it. I'm trying to talk to them about it too, shows that having the knowledge of 2 physical screens, your brain behaves differently versus one screen with a software solution. I think I'm pretty confident saying Surface Duo will always be dual screens. I do think what will happen though is we'll see some of that patented technology that they've used where this display curves into the center. And so it's more like a kind of like a book, and they do screen correction. So it minimizes the physical seam between the two. But I think they're going to always have dual screens. I'm
think about this. Look at how much the Fold has evolved in 1 generation. All right. Yeah. Now bring in a whole bunch of other manufacturers following in Samsung's wake, making other foldable display phones. And that is just going to keep getting that little trench, that little gutter that it has is going to keep getting minimized. That display tech is going to keep advancing. And you're saying in 5 years, Microsoft's still going to be sitting here being like, yeah, but you know what? What about 2 screens with a seam still? Huh?
Yes.
No way.
I think so. I do. I really do think they're going to stick with it. I think there's engineering advantages for having dual screens. Including the fact of like being able to flip it around back onto itself, which 100%. Maybe they can solve that eventually with foldables, but like that's like there's some like real advantages, at least right now, with dual screens. I think that it's the same thing with like Surface Book. Like we've talked about it endlessly, how Surface Book, like why didn't they have like a rotating hinge? But I don't think they'll ever change Surface Book.
No, Surface Book's a different beast. Nobody else. That's unlike anything that came before. Like Surface Book is this crazy, anomaly that I just adore, no matter how many bugs it has, and it has billions. Because it's just such a lovely computer to use, despite them. I love that machine. But Duo. I agree with you completely. The fold back on itself thing is crucial, and that is one place where people still don't seem to be getting it. Do you guys still get people asking you, like, yeah, but isn't it annoying when you have to close it all the way on itself? And it's like, you don't have to. You could fold it back, and then you have a phone that has a second screen that flips out.
That's one of the reasons why they went for glass on the outside as well. So it doesn't feel weird when you do that, because when you're holding it when it's closed anyway, it's glass.
Oh, of course.
When you hold it the other way, it feels exactly the same. There's no difference between the 2 materials, which I think is a very clever move.
It is. It is. And that kind of ingenuity, that kind of hardware thing, that's what I miss about using it. And that's why I'm looking forward to getting back to it. And not to mention the weight and the profile. Because the Galaxy Z Fold 2, I adore. But Erica Griffin tweeted yesterday. She was like, "Guys, am I crazy, or am I crazy for liking the Duo more?" And I'm like, "No, you're not, because the Z Fold 2 really does feel like a gold bar that you carry around. Like, it's huge. The Duo is not that." I loved your pocket pocket story, by the way, before the embargo. Can the Duo fit in a pocket?
One of the top articles on Windows Central. A lot of people had questions about that.
I believe.
Yeah. I feel like I was actually surprised. I was hoping this would be the case, but there seems to be a lot of creativeness and interest in Duo. And this idea of having dual screens has really got people to rethink how they're using things. I'm always seeing people on Twitter, like they're watching the sports ball game on one screen and live tweeting on the other screen. And you're thinking of like all these different kind of creative solutions. Of course, the big one is people are using Nintendo DS emulators to play a video game, because the bottom half can turn into kind of like a controller. And like, that's super wild. I mean, we all expected that could be a use case, but people are actually doing it and enjoying it. And I just saw, like, I don't know, there's a lot of, one of the things I got over excited about this week was all the book stuff. So Google Play Books, so what it's called, their book reader, that spans across both screens. Amazon Kindle, of course, does. We found out that Barnes and Noble's Nook app also spans to both screens, and they're great for reading books. And then you throw like a comic on there, and it's just like, it really, like, a lot of people, like, when you see a comic, it's just like, oh, this actually makes sense. There's something about it too. Matt Brown, one of our games writers, has a Surface Duo now too. And once you start using it for a few days, there's sort of an addictive quality to it.
Yes.
That's really hard to explain. Yeah.
And it, especially if you do embrace that dual device lifestyle that is required for a device of this type. You reject this notion that you have to use it as your phone would be my advice to a lot of folks. And because that's certainly, Microsoft is certainly designing it as this companion device. I always think of, in addition to the Fold when I'm using it, I think of the FX Tech Pro 1. That Android side-sliding QWERTY keyboard phone designed like it's from 2007. Very cool design. Or the Planet Computers Cosmo or Communicator. These PDA resurrections from the late 90s with full QWERTY keyboards. They're all trying to do, along with the Duo, this thing where it's like, bring back the idea of the Pocket PC for the modern age, but only the Duo has been able to do it in a way that you can actually put it in your pocket and not feel like you are weighed down. And the thing that just bums me out so hard about it is I still can't type on it in that mini laptop configuration.
Yeah, you're fixated on doing that.
I am. It's weird. I know. It's very strange. It's because a part of my brain is always going to be stuck in 2006 for some reason. But like, it's not because the layout doesn't work for me. It's not because of the bezels or this other crap. It's that touch response thing, and I really, really hope they can fix that. Because can you guys fly on this keyboard yet? Because I sure can.
I'm good at SwiftKey, so I'm pretty good at.
No, Deck, I'm great at SwiftKey on every other phone. It's this device. It's these touch response issues on this device.
So I think. Oh, there's an echo there. I think. So I have heard that they are aware of the touch optimization issues on this device, and I do believe they are working on a fix. I don't know if it'll be there in October. But they are aware, they've seen the feedback, they understand that sometimes for some reason when you tap on something, it comes across as a tap and hold rather than just a tap.
Yes.
And sometimes it almost feels like it locks up, whereas you tap on a few things and then it does all of those taps at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, they are aware of it. I don't know when the fix is coming. Hopefully it's not a hardware issue, because that would be a big problem.
I mean, I've also heard things get smoother when people switch out the launcher. So I think there's definitely something here with the software, the memory optimizations, because people say they switch out the launcher and everything is much more smooth. You can even like switch out the notification tray with third-party options. They're not really designed for dual screens, but they're very fast and fluid. And so I just feel like they just need to tweak the software, optimize the code a bit more. I don't have it. It's interesting on the typing, you want to use it like a laptop, and that's the difference here we're talking about with Fisher, where he likes to set up the clamshell and use it like a mini laptop. Whereas I feel like it was designed as more as a thumb keyboard, and you're holding it.
I'm into that too. I totally get that as well. That's awesome. Yes. it still doesn't. It still has the same touch response issues. But yeah, no, when you get used to that, right, and you're like you've got all that space per key. I mean, I can fly on the Fold, so yeah, totally get that.
I'm a bad typer on phones. I hate it. But
So I have a question for both of you. Do you think Microsoft was right to sort of present this device as not a phone? Because that was quite a big thing in a lot of people's reviews, and that's sort of whenever Microsoft is asked, "Is it a phone?" they never explicitly go, "Yeah, it's a phone." They always sort of get around the question by saying, "Well, we've built this device as this and that." I'm curious, what do you guys think on that? Do you think they were right to sort of present it like that, or should they just been like, "Guys, it's a phone"?
I have an answer for it right away. I think they had to do that. I really think that once I said it a second ago, once you free yourself of this notion that it has to be your one and only device, then the camera can just be a webcam. then the I was going to say then the battery life, but the battery life is actually really good.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to worry so much about these usability things of holding it up to your head and it kind of feels wide and big, or paying for things if you don't have a smartwatch, because it's not meant for that. It's your companion device you use alongside your phone. I thought it was marketing BS, frankly, when they first announced it. I was like, you guys just leaving yourselves an out in case it sucks. But no, it's a totally different kind of device. Whether that's successful, whether you can get people to spend money on 2 devices every 2 years, I don't really know. But I think it was the only way they could have built this thing was to position it like this. That's what I think.
What do you think, Dan?
I think I'm getting some weird internet connection issues.
As always.
Let's see if this straightens out a little bit. I agree. I mean, I wrote an article in 2015 after the Lumia 950 and XL were announced, and I had talked to Panos kind of off the record, and I could tell, he announced those phones on stage, but they weren't his phones. And I knew he wasn't into them. Like, he thought they were okay. He was proud of the team. They took the last mile on those devices. But they weren't his idea. And at that time, we now know, we'll just go into our other story later, we now know at that time, he envisioned a dual screen pocketable surface. That's what he was focused on. So when he had a 950, so I wrote an article. I said, does Microsoft want to reboot and rethink the concept of what a smartphone is? And that was 2015. I said, it's going to be something different than what a single slab device is. I didn't get the dual screen thing, which is, a big miss, but they were clearly, thinking about different ways of what a mobile device should be, knowing how we use those phones. It took 5 years, though, for that to land. But I do think that not calling it a phone, and people made a little bit too much head of that. He never denied it's a phone, of course. Right. He says it's first and foremost a surface. Mm-hmm. But, is it a tablet? I see a lot of people going, oh, it's a tablet that folds, which it kind of is, but kind of isn't, because the Fold 2 is that. Mm-hmm. And this is not, but I get the analogy because you have dual screens, can act like one. Is it a phone? It makes phone calls. I can use it as a phone. It's actually a good phone. So it does defy categorization right now. And that's hard for people because as human beings, we need to label and categorize everything. It's literally instinctual. It's part of our language system. And when people can't categorize something, it freaks them out. They're like, I don't know what that is, and until it sinks in. But I think they had to do this to sort of differentiate themselves from the market, because this idea, a lot of people are going, oh, this is kind of like a pocketable computer. And if you go back to the original concept of what this was, that's exactly what it was. It was a pocketable computer that ran Windows 10 and maybe even an Intel chip. Now we just happens to be kind of an Android phone for other reasons. And it's amazing that they pivoted that story. But the original conception of this device was different and really wasn't a phone. So I don't know.
Yeah, the Android OS really does muddy the waters, doesn't it? I mean, if this ran Windows, if Windows 10X or whatever had launched on time, or whatever, I think it would be a less confusing story for some folks. But you tell them, they're like, oh, it's a Surface. Oh, so it's Windows, and you're like, Android. Oh, so it's a phone. No, it's like it's a new thing.
I'm going to be one of those crazy people and actually use it as my only phone. I'm giving up the Galaxy Fold. I'm probably going to sell it, and I'm going to go all in on this device because I feel like
That's
it's kind of
all
my
I'm
job.
doing.
Yeah. So this, I think it's going to be an interesting experiment because I don't know. I wonder if Panos uses it as his only phone. I would hope so. It's his device after all.
I don't. So like, why would you not use it? Because like I've been using it.
Because obviously one's the camera, the lack of NFC, the bugs in the software still, which can be assuming there's no bugs in the software. I think it's the camera and the NFC that are the biggest, and the lack of 5G maybe for some people that are the biggest sticking points for this device. But yeah, that camera, especially above all else, I think a lot of people when they consider a phone these days consider the camera. They're like, which phone has the best camera? And the Duo right now is at the bottom of that list.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I was just going to say and this has to do partly with being locked down and I'm kind of still stuck in the house most of the time. But even when I go out on the weekends, I do a mountain climb, I'll do a bike ride. The camera's I've been posting the photos for a while on Instagram and Twitter. They've been fine. I'm not saying it's a good camera. I'm just saying for what I've been using it for. And I think that's partly because I'm not going out to dinner with friends every
That's
night.
the thing.
Yeah, low light.
You can go into a state park at high noon, every camera is a good camera. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I think it really comes down to basically how we're using these devices. I will say like, the Note 20 Ultra has a really good camera, but I don't know, this stuff doesn't really impress me anymore. Like I'm just not that blown away by cameras. I think partly just as I get older, I don't want to Instagram my food. So I feel like it just depends on the person. Obviously, a lot of people are, I think the biggest case is this, actually. It's people with kids and pets.
Yep.
Kids and pets. Yep.
Like if you have kids and pets, this is a terrible camera and you're going to be like really miffed by it. I have no kids. And I have a really old cat, who freezes perfectly for all my photos. So this is like why I'm totally fine with the camera, but I've been using it since day one as my main phone. And I have no plans to go back to the Note 20 Ultra, although I have it here in front of me and the iPhone 11.
Yeah,
I've been totally fine with it. Yeah,
I don't mean to suggest that you can't do it, especially if your priorities are aligned with it. I think it's great. I just think that it really has its best chance to shine if Microsoft can focus on the actual hard things of rewriting core Android features to accommodate some really compelling dual screen use cases instead of like trying to build a camera division out of essentially nothing. You know what I mean? And fit that into a thinnest ever mobile device. Like I don't think the world needs Microsoft to like try to be a phone manufacturer again. I think the world might need the Duo and what it can represent as a companion second or third device.
I think it's important to remember as well that this is never going to compete with the iPhone or the latest Galaxy, and it's never been intended. It was never designed to be that. A lot of people who read these reviews are like, this is never going to like replace my iPhone, and that's fine. This has always been a niche product from the very beginning when it was first conceptualized internally. Microsoft knew this was a niche product for a niche market, and as long as it can serve its purpose, and as long as it sells more than 5, I think it's a viable product that can exist in the world. It doesn't have to be this 100 million units sold product, because why would it? It runs Android now. There's no ecosystem for it to uphold. If you buy one of these 1 year and decide you don't want it or it doesn't get a second version, you can move to another device and all of the apps you paid for, all of the music you had on it can move over to that device just fine. It's not like Windows Phone where if you bought into the Windows Phone ecosystem and that ecosystem went away, you're screwed, which is what happened with Windows Phone and Windows 10 Mobile. If you buy this device and it doesn't get a second version, which it will, it's fine. You get to use this device for as long as it's supported, then you can move on to something else, and everything you paid for carries on with you, and it's not a big issue.
Yeah. I find a lot of this stuff too, and Fisher can relate. Go back to 2005. We could have literally the same discussion. Talking about Windows Mobile, talking about BlackBerry. These were cutting edge devices. Most people did not feel they needed it. They didn't even understand why they would want it.
I need email on my phone for.
Yeah, exactly. And so everybody was just like happy with their flip phones. And the goal at that time, the market was, how thin and small can you make these devices? Everybody wanted like, and that was, I mean, this was Zoolander, right? Where he pulls out the little tiny phone, like that perfectly encapsulated that moment in mobile history. But in 2005, 2006, Fisher and I were using these mobile smartphones, and we were amazed by it. We're like, oh my God, this is the future. This is exactly where this tech is going to go. And it took Apple to come along and shift everything. But that's why, like, I don't, it doesn't need to sell a lot, But what were you going to say, Fisher? Sorry.
Well, what a destructive impact that ultimately ended up having. And I don't want to S on Apple at all. Like, it's the iPhone, of course, revolutionized so much of the mobile landscape. But what do we have now? We have the iPhone, and then we have an ecosystem of Android devices that, to a space alien, are undistinguishable from the iPhone. Like, man, if foldables and dual screen devices hadn't come along when they did, I don't know what I probably would have pivoted to Tesla or something. Like, they're just getting so boring. And it not just in terms of looking at the hardware and being like, yep, it's another rectangle, but like the things you could do on them had really plateaued. This reinvigorates that, in concert with foldables, reinvigorates that space.
Could you imagine if this device had launched when it was originally intended to?
Oh my
God. The original schedule for this was 2018. It would have been the latest spec, so an 845 at the time. But could you imagine this form factor in 2018 before the Galaxy Fold, before any of those other like experimental devices? This would have rocked the world.
That would have been, well, it would have been Axon. It would have been ZTE Axon M, except presumably done a little bit better. Because that device, but there are some parallels there too. I mean, people bring that up and they're like, yeah, what about the Axon M? That doesn't get a lot of credit. And I'm like, well, this wasn't very good, but also there were things they did right that they really don't get credit for. Like that hardware really did feel incredible in the hand, and it closed and opened well, and the displays didn't have the same color temperature. But aside from that, it was a pretty cool device. It's just that Android wasn't optimized for it almost at all, and this is like, if Microsoft had come out with this at that time, boy, what a jump start it would have gotten on the foldable world.
On the subject of Android real quick, I do wonder if Android 11 will improve things for this device, because as far as I'm aware, with this based on Android 10, a lot of the app windowing and the dual screen stuff is custom, because Android 10 I don't think has all the plumbing in yet for native support for dual screens. I could be wrong on that, but I keep hearing that Android 11 is supposed to have native support for dual screen foldables, and I wonder if that will improve things like the gestures on these dual screen devices and stuff.
I've heard that too. I'm wary of just contributing to that echo chamber, because I think you and I were talking about it offline a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to Max Weinbach about it a little bit. So that is what I hear, and I hope that's true.
Yeah, I think the issue here is Android updates tend to overpromise and underdeliver. And so, it's always going to be like, I mean, gestures. Let's just take gestures. They were terrible until Android 10 came along. Everybody was doing their own. Samsung had theirs, OnePlus had theirs. But until Android 10 came along, like, they just weren't that great. And they're still not anywhere close to where Apple is in terms of just fluidity. I'm still blown away when I pick up my iPhone 11, just how smooth and fluid that operating system is. So Android still has the typical hiccups. And so I'm hoping in Android 11, we have heard the proposals, the coding that Microsoft has done on Duo is going upstream into it, and Google seems to be excited about it. But until I see it and try it, I don't really want it to be like, that's going to be the thing you want to wait for, because we just don't know.
Although, we have seen that before. Like the analog again is with the first Galaxy Fold, where it shipped with Android 9, I guess, and all the triple workspace multitasking was all custom. That was all Samsung built stuff. And from what I heard, and this might not be accurate because it's a single source, but the reason the Android 10 update was delayed for the Fold was because Samsung had a lot more work to do. They had to rip out a lot of their custom stuff and accommodate the native stuff that Android 10 had built in for foldables. So I can see a similar thing happening with Duo. But really, what's lovely about it is that it's such a weird, new, exciting thing, and it is such a well thought out concept that, man, even if the bugs were just fixed and it stayed on Android 10 forever, that'd be fine. I know it's not going to, but I would be very happy with living with Android 10 on this thing if it just did what it wants to do. Well,
Yeah. I've never been so obsessed with a device just sitting on a table doing nothing. It looks so
Totally.
good. It's hard to explain.
No, it's true. This gets back to the trying to explain it to people. Until you hold it, you use it, and even going to Best Buy is a great foot in the door for that experience. You'll get an immediate appreciation of why we're so googly-eyed over the hardware. But until you take it home and live with it and then use it, it won't click. And even then, I keep telling the story. My first 24 hours, I was like, I don't know about this. Like, even I wasn't feeling it, because it was so foreign. There were still software issues. The software hadn't settled in, which is always a weird thing you only have to say on Android devices.
yeah.
But then a week later, and I'm just like, and now we're like 3 weeks into it. This is it for me. Like, I don't want to go back to anything else. And that's why I keep telling people, like, if you're on the fence, if you're really curious about this stuff, your best bet, try it through the Microsoft Store, 60-day trial. Like, you'll know after a week, it just fits into your life. But at least with 60 days, so long as you don't break it, you'll really get a taste for what this device does. But it is exciting. Fisher's talking about how smartphones are getting boring, and it's totally true. I stopped following all the OnePlus updates and the new iPhones. I'll check an iPhone, the new one, like 2 months after it's been announced. I'll be like, all right, finally, let's see what's new. But for the most part, even Samsung stuff, the Note 20 Ultra, I think is an amazing. It's the pinnacle of what they've been trying to do since like 2012 in a device. But it took them like 8 years to get there, including one exploding one, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I think every Note was pretty much a success, except for that exploding one is the thing, though. It did.
Right,
It
but
took
like
them
it didn't
long
get.
to refine it.
But the Note 9, like I loved it. I bought that and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then like it wore off because the One UI stuff was too fresh, was too new, was too buggy. It just wasn't delightful. 2.0 came out and I actually really like 2.0, and then 2.5 is even better. So like this stuff does take time to bake, and we have to kind of remember that. I keep bringing up iOS with people. Like iOS 1.0 is awful.
Not good. Yeah.
No
It has a lot
copy
of missing
paste.
features. Yeah.
The
No
phone only
multitasking.
ran 2G, no multitasking, no
No
apps,
GPS. Yeah.
no
Of
GPS.
course.
I mean, but look where they are now, right? So it's unfair because you go to Best Buy, you see phones. It's totally fair then to evaluate them based on what they can do and make that decision. That's totally fair. It's a little unfair because this is completely starting over. So it's going to take some time. And that's where I'm really interested is, do they catch up? Do they make that progress? Because it's an open question, right? And that's what makes recommending this device kind of difficult right now.
That's one of the things. And I think the thing with me is that I'm very receptive, not just to multiple devices, because I will carry multiple devices for fun, even if I'm not working. You know what I mean? I'm very receptive to the notion of an idea of a device for work and a device for the rest of my life. The Duo could very well be a great choice for people who want to use it just for work. And I can see like fleets buying it for people who need to be even more mobile than carrying around a laptop would permit. But I think there should be a law. If I own an island someday, it is going to be a law of the land that if you try to sell a device with productivity in your marketing pitch, it needs to be, above all, it just needs to be immediately responsive to every piece of input. So that's all I need it to do, and I could be very happy with it. So we will keep our fingers crossed. Hey, we can have a leather version of this thing, because I need that to happen.
So there is the Soapy Box, I think it's called. They're a company that makes skins similar to D-Brand, and I do have a leather one showing up probably tomorrow or sometime soon. So I'll get photos of that. It's just a decal faux leather, right? The problem with these skins, and D-Brand knows this, is the precision on this device is so tight that even if you put a thick 3M skin on the front and back, when you flip it around, you're going to get this sort of like effect here, where it's gonna make a wedge and you won't be able to. You can squeeze it closed, but then the concern is you're stressing the hinge. And
Yeah.
and from what I understand, D brand has that problem, and the Soapy Box ones have that problem. The Zag clear skin does not. So if you just want a clear sticker skin to go on, that's thin enough where it doesn't impact. But anything that's multiple layers, basically just sticky layer and then the printed layer on top of it, this is going to be something you have to think about. But screen protectors work beautifully. I've had no issues with screen protectors. So.
Yeah, you've got your matte screen protector on there, right? I was watching your video and I was like, God, you always look like such a stone cold BA. Like, it's just such a cool look on those things. I really want to get those.
Yeah, $8 on Amazon, and you get 3 of each screen as a bag. Which is like the best. I had so many. I sent Zach a pair and I sent Matt a pair when I sent their phones out so they could have it too. Yeah, the matte, like I'm a big fan of it just because it does give a completely different look. It almost looks fake. It looks like it's like it's like a printed like photo or something like that.
Or a pad from TNG. Like it's like that finish that it's not a real screen. It's like paper.
Yep.
I am bummed out that the tolerances are so tight on the D-brand thing, though, because I did ask D-brand for white and black leather, because the notebook parallels are just irresistible with this thing. I think that's another reason that you like to carry it around, or if you're like me, you like to carry it around, because it's like when you finish a task, a lot of people will talk about intentionality. A lot of people will talk about disconnecting from their phones when they close it. It's not me. I don't like to be disconnected. It's not that. It's something else in that action of going.
Noise. The noise is.
It is the noise.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's just a perfect noise.
It's so good. It's so good. I was in this very sound booth recording that noise over and over again to put in my video, and I was just like, I could do this all day. Yeah, exactly. You're like Annabong, open and close.
Why isn't there a tech channel specifically for ASMR where they just open and close things and press on buttons all day?
It'd be like 3 devices. It'd just be Surface. The funny thing about that is that's something they're conscious of. Like that wasn't an accident, right? They did that on Surface laptop too, where the way it closes, it's like a premium luxury car door closing, and they purposely do that to make that experience because they know it's going to feel that way, and it's just like it's mind-blowing.
It's not even easy to simulate. David Imell's review for Android Authority starts with this entire parallel to the movie Her, which he had to remind me, I forgot, but the prop phone in that movie is basically a tiny Duo. Like it folds back on itself, and it's
I've never seen that movie.
You should see it.
Yeah, grab yourself a box of tissues and put your feet up tonight, dude. It's a sad time. But the prop phone in that looks like a Duo, but it's so chintzy and cheap because it's a movie prop. Like the Duo is like, it's weird because that looks like the prototype in real life that you have to live with, and the Duo looks like the movie prop that you could never make because it's too good. It's like it's reversed.
So funny. Well, I don't want to keep you all day. You've actually been pretty gracious on this podcast so far.
I would love to hang with you guys all day, but I've got about like 5 more minutes unless you guys want to change subjects right now.
I mean, do you want to hear? Did you get to read Zach's story about Andromeda?
No, I do want to hear about that. Yeah, let's hit it.
So, Zach,
sure. I mean, I'll give you the quick rundown then. So, obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this device has been in the works for a long time. It was never originally going to be an Android device. Microsoft commissioned, or I guess greenlit the product with the intention of it releasing as a Windows product. But because of its form factor, which hadn't really been seen before at the time, they couldn't just stick old-fashioned Windows on it. And while they were doing Windows 10 Mobile at the time, they couldn't stick Windows 10 Mobile on it either because it wasn't adaptable and it wasn't all there and it couldn't do everything they were envisioning for this product. So they started building a new version of Windows called Windows Core OS, which the plumbing of that is now in things like Windows 10X, the HoloLens 2, and it was originally going to be on this device, codenamed Andromeda at the time. And they started working on that, and they also had to build a brand new shell for it as well, an adaptable shell that could adapt to the different postures and stuff. It had a continuum mode that would dock up to an actual full Windows 10 desktop experience with windowed apps and all of that good stuff, which is unlike Windows 10 Mobile, which only had sort of the fake continuum desktop mode. And it had a huge focus on pen, unlike the Duo. Although the Duo does have pen support, I'd say pen on the Surface Duo feels like an afterthought. In the original vision for this product, which they had started building, pen was the primary input, on equal ground as a fingertip, in the sense that when you'd open the device, it would open into a digital journal. and the journal was the home screen. So you could have things like sticky notes, obviously written text. You can have to-do lists on it. You could have icons on it and stuff. Like if you remember, do you remember Bump 3D, I think it's called, or Bump Top, that program on Windows where you could turn your desktop into like a virtual table and stick icons on it and stuff. That's sort of what they were going for this, like a digital pocket journal. And it did run Windows, so it had UWP apps and whatever else it had, Cortana, all that good stuff. But that never saw the light of day. Had it been completed on time, it would have shipped in 2018. First half would have been a developer edition. The second half of the year would have been the full retail release. But they were never able to meet the deadline for a number of different reasons. Primarily, the software was incredibly buggy, not unlike the Duo, and there was another reason. And the app gap, right? Windows has always had this problem on mobile phones with there being an app problem. It doesn't have the top apps, or it may have, say, the 100 top apps. I think it did at one point, but it's always that one app that you really need that it hasn't got that kills it for most people, whether it's your banking app or whatever else. And the Duo would have been no different had it launched with Windows. It would have been a different form factor, would have been this new version of Windows, but that core issue of not having apps would have killed this outright. And that's one of the core reasons why they moved to Android after killing the Windows version of this. But that's why it's been in development for so long, because they tried for 3 long years to build a version of Windows for this device and failed. And Microsoft never talks about it. In all of their interviews about the history of the Duo, they're like, yeah, we started working on this in 2014. And right. Why? People ask, well, we just have. And they never mention the fact that, for 3 years we were sort of stuck building a version of Windows for it that we're never going to ship. But let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I find this so kind of damning with the internal problems that Microsoft has, which is, someone did a meme on this on Twitter. I have it somewhere about the team that makes the sizzler reels for the products and then the reality. Different thing. And so Microsoft's very good at envisioning what the future should be. Let's just say Zach and I saw something about Surface Pocket. And when you see this and what they were thinking about in 2014, 2015, it was just George Jetson's magic. It was everything that Windows Phones fans had wanted. It was stuff I was hearing at the time. I heard of a metal phone. It was going to be an Intel chip. You were going to connect it to a computer display. You were going to run full desktop Windows. It was everything people wanted. And then you put it in your pocket, take it with you. That was the vision. And when you watch, you see the internal ideas they had for this, you're like, yeah, I want that. And then when they went to go make it happen, they failed. That's what happened. It freaking failed. And it's just one of the world's largest software companies couldn't pull that off. And that I just find heartbreaking. But Fisher, what do you think?
It's fascinating because you go back far enough and you can see that you can trace all of this to the really sitting way too long with an existing mobile product that really needed to be modernized in the form of Windows Mobile, whatever it was at that point, 6 or 7 or 8. It wasn't. No, excuse me. It was 6. And when the iPhone came out and that very famous Ballmer interview was, it may sell very well, but we're not taking it very seriously. And it's like, all right, guys. Well, and I was with you guys. I mean, I wasn't in the industry at the time, but I've always been a nerd for this stuff. And I was one of the Windows Phone early adopters. I mean, I got it before Mango, and I'm sitting there. I still remember sitting there at bars and people asking me about this phone that looks like nothing else. And then when you pick it up, it actually performs. It's 1-to-1. It's more responsive than any Android phone. It's as responsive as the iPhone, if not more so. And wow, you're like, wow, this actually feels like
smoked by Windows Phone.
Smoked by Windows, RIP. But turn it on. I can see the weather. But Microsoft's repeated failure to advance that beyond a kind of distant third really has led to many of these problems here. I mean, we could talk about it forever. You guys have talked about it for years. It just stinks that it took so long, but I think embracing Android for Duo is a really, really positive first step.
Yeah. Because
all these problems that we've been talking about, that I've been talking about with regard to the Duo, are totally expected for a first device launched with an entirely new platform to Microsoft. And if you're able to stick with it and fix it, Microsoft has never had a problem with having good ideas. You know what I mean? It's just about the execution. So I'm just excited.
And as we wrap down with Fisher here, and that's kind of like what I was really encouraged by, and I'm sure Microsoft was too. All the, the tech reviews, like the Gadgets, The Verge, the YouTube influencers, all kind of had that same conclusion, which was, this isn't ready. Tough recommend right now. I can't wait though to see what's in version 2, because everybody was kind of like, there's something here with this concept. And really, that's, for me, that was the only crucial part of the review, was like, because if that didn't work, if we picked it up and we use this and we're just like, this thing is terrible, no camera, no NFC, no 5G, none of that would save the concept of the device. But being that the concept seems to have footing and people are genuinely interested in it, I think is the good news. Now the question is, can they execute on a version 2 enough to satisfy a lot of people and improve the software experience? So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, the version 1 is also just fine. It's just the software that needs to be iterated on. So I cannot wait to bother Zach in about an hour when you guys are done and pester him as to what he knows about when we can expect that other software update, because I'm just gonna come and irritate him.
Well, we are hearing things. All right. So Fisher, where can we find you on the internets? If you want to give yourself some plugs here.
You can find me at r/Surface Duo. I like hanging out there all day long. It's actually it's legit. I kind of crapped on it the other day, but I feel bad about it because it is a cool community. There's a lot you can learn there. So go to r/Surface Duo if you're curious about real users with this thing. But I am at the Mr. Mobile on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and that's about it. THEMRMOBILE. And I thank you guys. It's been forever since I've been on this show, so thank you for having me on and letting me ramble.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thanks. We'll try to have you more on often. Often.
Try to have you
more often. Look, it's been a long week. We all know this. In 2020 has been a very long time, but we are trying to have more guests on because it does make a more exciting podcast, and we love hearing, of course, alternate viewpoints. But as always, thanks for joining us,
guys. Thank you. Great to see your faces as always, and stay safe. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Yep, you too.
Right. I guess we can get back on track. By the way, Dan, if we're going to have more guests on, you need better internet.
I don't think it's my internet.
It's
because I'm watching you right now, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, but
you're
just because our videos are fine doesn't mean your output is fine.
Well, I can go and reboot the router.
It's fine when it's just us. It's fine when it's just us. So before we move on from this and join a bit, I do want to sort of talk a little bit more about some of the UX experiences, because that's sort of the big news for a lot of the fans who have been asking me about this to write this article for so long. Because the UI, nobody had seen the UI. I'd seen the UI a couple of years ago, and I'd seen it evolve from one thing to another. In fact, when I originally first saw Andromeda, it was using the journal experience was actually a journal. It was designed as a book, and you could turn the pages and stuff. But in the later builds, towards the end of, closer towards its cancellation, they changed it out for the Microsoft Whiteboard app. So you can actually go and download the Microsoft Whiteboard app today and experience what the home UI was going to be like on Andromeda, if you really want to. Obviously, it's not across two screens, but you'll be able to get a taste of inking onto it and having sticky notes and putting files onto the canvas and stuff, if you really want to. It was gesture-based, so although there was like a start button in the bottom left and a Cortana button in the bottom right, you could swipe in from the left edge of the screen and the start menu would slide out. You could swipe left again to get access to the apps list. If you swiped from the right edge of the screen, that would open the Action Center / Cortana. So this was a device where Microsoft had combined both the Action Center and Cortana into one thing. The idea for Cortana on this device was it was going to manage things for you, including your notifications. So whenever a notification came in and you'd missed it, the Cortana icon in the bottom right would pulsate. To be like, hey, there's alert, click me and I can show you. You'd press on it and obviously it would slide the notification open. And then if it was something that supported quick actions or actionable notifications, Cortana would be like, I can do this for you if you want and stuff. So the idea was Cortana would be able to sort of manage things for you on this device, which sort of ties into the whole pocket journal idea sort of nicely, which I think is pretty cool. There was a control center as well, which was a swipe down. I don't have any photos of that in the article because I never saw a finished version. I saw a very rough version because the project was never done, of course. And the swipe up was task view, similar to how it is on the Surface Duo today. It would have been the first version of Windows to really embrace, I say first version, not including Windows 8. It would have been the first version of a Windows 10 based product to sort of embrace gestures. And I think that was crucial for this device because with the dual screens and having to move things across the both screens and stuff, gestures are an important aspect of this form factor. And they did embrace that with the Windows version. But yeah, that's basically the most notable bits about the Windows version of this device, as I mentioned there. As Dan mentioned, this project was sort of conceptualized in early 2014, 2015 in renders that were incredibly unrealistic, but sort of gave the idea of here's what we want. We have this dual screen device. It can do continuum, runs Windows, possibly Intel powered. I know that, of course, Dan had done excellent reporting back then regarding what he was hearing. There was a metal Intel phone, at least in consideration at Microsoft, and that touched the dual screen aspect as well. But obviously they ultimately decided to go with an ARM chip. Quite early on when the project was greenlit, I don't think they spent a lot of time trying to make it an Intel device. I think they very quickly went and said, this is going to be an ARM device. Because Intel sort of dropped the ball regarding their mobile chips.
I don't think, because if we think about it, some of the early conceptions had this running like full Photoshop.
Yes.
And it looked like it ran x86 applications. And so like, even if we took that from 2015, I don't think you could do that today.
No,
like we don't have the x86 chip that could do that and get more than 3 hours of battery life in your pocket.
My assumption is Microsoft were conceptualizing this idea with the assumption that Intel had something up its sleeve. Perhaps they had meetings and Intel said, yes, we've got this great chip on the way, and it just never happened.
Intel Atom.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so this obviously ARM was the right choice for this, and they started development on what I would consider to be the Surface Duo in late 2015, early 2016. And that form factor very quickly took shape. In the article I've written, you can actually see one of the late stage Andromeda prototypes, and if you look at it, it looks kind of like a Surface Duo. There are some key differences between the hardware. One, I think the bezels are ever so slightly thinner on the Andromeda hardware. There's also external cameras. There's a camera bump on the back of the device, which introduced a number of interesting design concerns for the Surface team, which I actually go into in the article. One, if there's a camera bump on the back, what happens if you fold the device 360 degrees? The answer is you can't, because the camera bump bumps into the back of the other side of the device, so you can only open it to, 359 or 358 degrees, which sucks. Especially if you're trying to do it in like laptop mode on the table, the camera bump gets in the way as well. So one of the ways to get around that whole 360 degree hinge problem was to create a camera divot in the exact opposite side of the device where the camera would normally hit. And while that worked, it looked ridiculous. You can see it in the article. There's a device he's holding with a camera hole in it. And I think the Surface team agrees with my result here, saying that that looked ridiculous, and so the Surface team decided not to do that, at least with the Duo 1. Perhaps they'll return to that with Duo 2, or maybe they'll create an entirely new camera design where, it connects to another camera or something. I don't know what they're going to do, but the other thing, it was metal. That was just one of the design choices they went for. And not only the front and back were metal, but the actual rails, the edge of the device were metal as well, which is different from the Duo, which is polycarbonate. I'm going to say polycarbonate around the sides. They changed it for a couple of reasons. One, as I mentioned with Michael Fisher there, it being glass means that when you're holding it in either open or closed mode, it feels the same. And two, the metal dented and scratched quite a bit because that's what metal does. And using glass hides that much easier. And then the rails, they changed the rails because it hides the antenna bands. If you notice, if you look at Surface Duo, there were no antenna bands on the rails here. On Andromeda, there were antenna bands because if it was metal, they needed those antenna bands. So a lot of the decisions that they made regarding the hardware between Andromeda and this were design-based. That Surface is a very design-driven team, and they wanted to make the cleanest, minimalist-looking device possible. And Andromeda was that, but they could make it better in regards to making it more minimal, and that's what they've done with the Duo. And I think I actually really, don't get me wrong, I would like a better camera on this, but this clean aesthetic on the outside, I think, is chef's kiss. I actually really, really like that there's no camera bump on this.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's always sad to see what could have been, but I don't think they could have pulled off what they were trying. I would have liked to have, of course, Windows 10, Windows 10X, Windows Phone, mobile, whatever. I would have preferred that to Android, except for that app problem. But you and I have talked about that, how we would have made it work, right? We would have just lived with it. That said, I think this was the smarter business decision. The project was shelved and it didn't look like it was ever going to come out, which would have been a shame to have wasted this hardware, which is how I believe they kind of felt about it. And I feel like doing the Android thing wasn't ideal. And there's some good articles right now out there with Panos talking about this and, the hubris and going to Google's campus and propose this idea to them. But they did it, and I think it was probably the right decision. It was the facing of the reality. It's a shame, but this goes back. Done it before. This goes back to Bill Gates. This goes back to Steve Ballmer, who, by their own admissions, their biggest regrets at Microsoft was not taking mobile seriously. And that set this disastrous kind of rolling path. And they kind of had to completely reboot. And I said that for a while. They were going to reboot. And they did, with new hardware that leapfrogs where everybody is. But I didn't see, and I don't think anyone else did, that they were going to also reboot the idea of the operating system by going Android. But it was probably the right decision. It's a shame. You can't, I don't think the market right now will allow you to build a 1.0 operating system anymore.
No, you can't. Yeah.
So, it's just, we're in too deep.
It's not viable.
Yeah, it's just like PCs. Like PCs are Mac, Windows, teeny sliver for Chrome, which is mostly target based for a specific niche audience.
Mostly Linux.
Yeah, and technically it is growing, but still, it's not like, And so what I'm saying is, like, there's PS2 years ago. Like, there were alternate operating systems for the PC that really went nowhere. And I think it's really hard right now if you wanted to do a 1.0 operating system, to get it going. We'll see what happens with Windows 10X, which will face that problem. But
the only scenario where I can see a 1.0 operating system being viable in any sense is if PWA's web apps take off and are a monumental success. If we get to a point where everybody's building a universal app that works on any platform because it's a web app, then anyone can come along and build an operating system. At that point, it will just be the UI that you lay on top of where the web apps can run. And that's a possibility for Windows in the future, but that relies on web apps becoming the norm. And right now, I don't think they are the norm. At least on mobile, they're still very much native apps are the primary. And some web apps are, showing up here and there on mobile. I think they're much more popular on desktop right now. But on mobile, we are seeing them in some places here and there. Like the Twitter web app works wonderfully on phones. I really love the Twitter web app on Android. So who knows in the future, 5 years, 10 years, perhaps if PWAs or web apps take off, then perhaps Microsoft may re-enter or try again with a Windows-based device that fits in the pocket. But this is all what if. This isn't a plan. This isn't a Microsoft isn't talking about this internally. They've not sat down in a meeting and gone, right, in 10 years' time we'll revisit this. That's not what they've said. For now, Windows on Andromeda, Windows on Surface Duo, Windows in the pocket is just not a thing that they're doing. And I think that's the right choice, unfortunately.
And that ties a little bit to, someone's bringing this up right now, Surface Neo, which is pushback as they focus on single screen devices, and with the pandemic to switch to more mid-range devices and meeting the market where it is today. There is this rumor mill growing. It's not even rumors. It's just that, now that Microsoft did Surface Duo with Android, they're going to go and put Android onto Surface Neo.
No, they're not. Because,
and I keep pushing back on this. First of all, I mean, Panos has been very adamant. First of all, he's in charge of Windows now. He is. He loves Windows. He wanted Windows on Surface Duo. He had to put Android onto Duo to save the hardware. Otherwise, it was never going to come out. But he's said repeatedly, Android makes sense on phones. It doesn't make sense on PCs and computers and laptops, which is what Surface Neo is. Yeah, I know it's big, but it's not like you can't fit it in your pocket. It's going to be like a laptop replacement, a Surface Pro replacement. No, they're not going to put Android on it because we all know Android sucks on large screens. It's the reason why none of you listening to this podcast, I know, have Android tablets or Android computers or are yearning for the latest Chromebook, because it's just not that great of an experience compared to PC. And Panos recognizes the strength of Windows, and it's going to continue to be there. There could be this question, will it run 10X? Will it run full Windows? I think that could be something they can play with, but I don't see them putting Android on this. I don't see the benefit there at all.
Yeah, I agree. Android will never be on anything other than the Surface Duo or a pocketable Surface, because I think Panos put it great himself in the interview that Dan mentioned. Windows is good at big screen stuff. Android is good at small screen stuff. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was the interview with Panos on The Verge on October 2019.
Yeah.
And they asked him basically this question. And his actual responsibly was, no.
No.
No, it's not. That's not happening. We're not moving away from Windows. He's like, I love Windows. Windows is good at this stuff.
Yeah. Don't get listen. Panos wanted Windows on the Duo. He waited he was a very patient man. He waited a very long time for the Windows team to get their crap together and actually sort that out for the form factor. And the Windows team, fortunately, were never able to achieve that. The project was never, it was still buggy. A lot of senior leadership team meetings, they sort of get updates on the status, the progress the project was making, and the progress was slow. There were a lot of delays, lots of bugs, lots of issues. Lots of sources have said to me that some of the tools they were using weren't up to snuff. There's loads of people have pointed to loads of different things as to why the project was cancelled. I don't think there's one single thing that killed this thing. I think it's a lot of things, small and big internally, that ended up killing this product. And Panos really wanted to get this form factor out there, and he really wanted to get it out there with Windows, but you can't ship a device without software. And if Windows wasn't going to be able to deliver that software, then he had to look elsewhere. I don't know if there was a time of nothingness between Andromeda being cancelled and the Surface team moving to Android, because no one's been able to confirm to me, because a lot of people who worked on the Windows side of this were not told that the project had moved on to Android. They were just sort of told the project's been postponed. Your work can now be reused on Windows 10X, which was codenamed Santorini. I do wonder if there was a period of time where the Surface team thought they were never going to ship this and sat down and sort of were done with it before someone went, what if we do Android? Or if they had immediately decided, let's just move to Android, forget about Windows. I do wonder about that, and I don't know if I'll ever have an answer, unfortunately.
It had to have happened with the leadership team and Satya, where they were like, all right, we're canning the Andromeda OS thing.
Yeah.
And then they had to go, like, what do we do with this hardware?
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to think, and I'm sure someone probably went, we could maybe do Android.
How dare you? Great idea.
Yeah. and then the question is, how long between that idea and then actually move forward?
Well, because
we don't.
I mentioned it in the article as well. When Microsoft ultimately did decide to go to Android, they didn't immediately have a team that could begin working on Android OS for this device. They had to hire out external vendors and contractors to get that initial groundwork off the ground. Most of those people are now in-house full-time as Microsoft employees, so that's good news. But yeah, at first it was very secretive as well. This isn't like, they told the Andromeda project that, by the way, we're moving to Android. If you want to come and help, come along. That's not what happened. It was Andromeda's been postponed, and that was the last the Andromeda team at the software side had heard of. They weren't told that there was an Android version in the works now. They weren't told that the product was never coming. They weren't told the product is coming. They were just told it's postponed. Some teams continued working on some Andromeda OS stuff. I believe one of the the whiteboard change happened after the announcement of its postponing, I think, which I think is interesting. So they were still self-hosting it internally after the fact. But yeah, the move to Android was very secretive at Microsoft, and I think it's the right call.
I just want to push back on this too, because now that Panos is in charge of Windows, people are like, oh, maybe they're going to revisit this and put a version of Windows 10, 10X onto a Surface Duo, maybe for version 3, right? Microsoft has been very consistent that once they release a device, they don't dramatically change it. They don't change the operating system. They don't change the fundamental features of it. If you look at Surface Pro, it's just been tweaked and modified, but it's never the core concept of a kickstand built into it. A keyboard attaches magnetically is never changed. Surface Book has never changed. They commit to the product, and that is the product. The idea that Duo 3 is going to come out with like a new operating system. No, you don't do that. First of all, for people, because people are going to want a version 3 and expect it to have Android, and you can't change horses mid-race. They could always do like a different device, but I just don't see them doing that. Why put all the work into making Android do what you want it to do, only to like now put Windows on there and start all over again? And this idea that like they would offer a choice or maybe 2 versions, it sounds good, but it's just not. It doesn't make business sense, and I don't think as a business, and it muddies up your messaging. Like it just causes problems. So I really don't think we'll ever see Duo with a version of Windows anymore. I think it's that.
I agree.
That train has sent.
I can tell you for a fact that there is no plan, that there is no work going on internally, that there's no timeline for a version of the Duo with Windows. It's just not something on their radar. It's not being worked on. I know a lot of people say, yeah, I'm sure they're considering it. They're not even considering it. They're not talking about it. It's just not happening. And again, like I said, and unless PWAs take off in a monumental fashion and the idea of native apps are no longer a thing, Windows will never happen on phones again, unfortunately.
Definitely. Well, that's enough of Duo. We spent over an hour talking about that.
There's a lot of other stuff we need to talk about today.
Quickly, the Ben test along with Surface Duo. Jerry rigs everything. Did his abuse test on the hardware. Took a razor to it, lit it on fire, tried to bend it, and spoiler alert, Surface Duo is amazingly built.
It's also very flexible. That it's flexible in a way that I've not seen a phone flex before.
Right. Yeah. So he bent it the other way, but it'll hold up in your pocket just fine. It's a very resilient device. Go watch that video. It's a little horrifying, of course, but if you're concerned that Surface Duo is too delicate or is going to break easily, we still don't know a drop test. Although I've not seen a single photo of someone having dropped this and it shatter.
I have.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I saw some. I don't know if he dropped it, but the screenings on the inside had cracked, and it looked like it had been hit on the corner, so I assume he did drop it. You know what? I took off the bumper. I'm going bumperless because I living on the edge and stuff, and I hate that this bumper sucks. It's rubbish. I hate it. It collects dust like a horrible thing. It's just rubbish. I hate it.
It does, but I don't find it that bad. Mine really doesn't have any dust on it.
I live in a dusty house, apparently.
Yeah, I'm either or on the bumper. I was fine for 2 weeks without it. I like the way it feels with it, but there are pros and cons. It does fit better in your pocket without it, of course. But then finding the fingerprint reader is easier with the bumper. It also feels more secure when you're holding it. I don't know. It's like I said, I can go either way. Of course, Zach has this. My big issue is the ceramic can discolor.
Yeah, mine hasn't yet, luckily.
Most people don't. And I was the odd guy out.
I wonder why some do.
I was the odd guy out in the review pool who pointed out like mine are discoloring to yellow, and they're like, yeah, we kind of knew that might happen. And then it was what's her name, Erica
Griffin,
Erica Griffin complained about it too. So it's a very small percentage of people, but there is that chance that, and mine do look like a slight yellow gray. So the bumper,
disgusting.
It is disgusting.
It's like Alcantara, the yellowing on the Alcantara.
Yeah,
laptop.
right. But the bumper hides that, so I don't know.
Yeah. I might get the red bumper or the grey one. They look the colors. Look nice. So by the way, I don't know if they've announced them yet, but Best Buy sort of did. There are more colors on the way. They're $40, which is daylight robbery. But they come in red, grey, and I think ice blue, or I think it's ice blue, ember, and graphite are the official names.
Yep.
I think the red and the grey look really nice.
They all do. It's gonna
Yeah.
be one of those tough things, and unfortunately, you can't buy two of them and just swap them out because.
Well, I mean, but they come in two parts, so you could have one side red, one side grey if you really wanted.
Whoa! Didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's baller. That's also flashing effect.
If
You
I
have a
spent
$1,400
$80.
device. Yeah, you have a $1,400 device, and then you wouldn't spend another $80 just to do dual tone. Oh my God, that would look so cool
I
though.
might actually,
Like, how,
yeah, I might do that.
that, do like matching skins too or something?
Oh my god, so many
And blue and
customization
red.
opportunities for this thing.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Now my mind is reeling. Anyway, that's enough with Surface Duo. If you are still interested in Duo, we will be doing extensive coverage. There's a Surface Duo block on the Windows Central page. I usually add a story every day or every 2 days. I've been covering all the apps coming out for it, or they've been updated for it, or little tricks on how to make it run better. So go check that out, and you can follow the progress there. Also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, of course, and I'll be sharing stuff there. But let's move on to 20H2. Boring. Tell us what happened there this week.
So essentially, Microsoft has announced that it's done and it's coming soon. They haven't given us an official release date, but they're calling it the Windows 10 October 2020 update, which suggests it's coming in October. It is version 20H2, so they're not going to do version 2010. Because that would be ridiculous. Version 20H2 is the official version number. Build 19042.508 is the RTM for this release. It's available in the beta channel right now. It doesn't appear to be in the release preview channel. Oh, no, it is. So it's now being offered in the release preview channel via our Seeker experience in Windows Update first. So this means you won't automatically get this. You have to go into the settings app, go to the Windows Update area, and then there should be a little box that says install the Windows 10 October 2020 update. So if you're in the release preview channel, you can do that now. I'm sure they'll automatically push it to you in the next few weeks, because if it's coming in October, likely I would guess the patch Tuesday of October, which is October 13th. That's, I assume, when it will come out. And yeah, so my 20H2 review will be up next week. For those interested, it's not a huge update, just a couple minor UI changes here and there. It's going to be an easy review, really. I think this is Panos's first version of Windows 10, technically. He sort of pushed through some minor UI changes for this release, and I think they are very nice UI changes. But I think next year's releases are going to be the big ones where we really see what Microsoft has been working on under Panos. But this year, 20H2 is the start of this, and it's a minor one, but it's a nice one. It's not too in your face about the UI stuff. Just small tweaks here and there, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Sounds like a plan. Speaking of stuff, I forgot. Did you publish your Pro X2 stuff this week?
Did.
So let's talk about that briefly, because I'm super excited. Although we kind of covered it on the podcast last time, but just to rate.
I mean, we can also talk about what we're not hearing is coming in October as well. So we'll just do a sort of, I guess this segment can be the what hardware we're expecting this year and what hardware we're not expecting. So in the last couple of episodes of the podcast, obviously I mentioned that we're expecting a new 12.5-inch Surface laptop. This is supposed to be a cheaper sort of Surface Laptop Go, if you will, starting between $500 and $600. It won't have Windows Hello Face. It has a fingerprint reader. It also, I found out this week, it doesn't have pen. It does have touch, so it's still a touch screen. It doesn't have pen, doesn't have Windows Hello Face, but it does have fingerprint. It's smaller, so 12.5-inch screen. The keyboard, I think, is still relatively normal size, though. All metal, there's no Alcantara option. Should be available in a number of different colors, and aimed specifically at the education market, although normal people will be able to buy them as well. I'm very excited for this device. It's codenamed Sparty. I think it's going to be really fun. And since it's so cheap as well, I think Microsoft will sell a lot of them. In addition to that, we're also hearing that there is a new Surface Pro X on the way, codenamed Karina, I believe. This will be powered by a Microsoft SQ2 processor, which is likely based on the Snapdragon 8CX Gen 2 that was announced recently. The notable change with this one will be it's now available in Platinum, in addition to black, so that's nice. One of my biggest, in fact, the biggest complaint I had about the first Surface Pro X was that it was only available in black, and not only black, but fingerprint black, and it just was such a fingerprint magnet. The Platinum version should hopefully hide that. Also, we're expecting more type cover accessories. Again, with the first Surface Pro X, it was only available black type cover. This one should have the usual colors that the normal Surface Pro line has as well. So they're sort of bringing it up to par with the standard Surface Pro. which I think makes quite a bold statement, especially since we're hearing that there's no Pro 8 being announced in October. If Microsoft announces the Pro X2 on its own and says, oh, by the way, it now looks like the old Surface Pro, well, in regards to colors, and has all the same accessories color-wise, it kind of feels like they're sort of suggesting it's ready for mainstream. Of course,
it does. It does give it like a little space, right?
Yeah.
Because we are expecting Pro 8 probably in the spring with a major redesign. But if they get this out now or soon with those new accessories, and it's just literally the star of the show versus being announced as along the side of Surface Pro, that does change the story a little bit.
I agree, yeah, and like I said, I think it gives off the impression that Microsoft considers the Surface Pro X a mainstream product now. Whereas last year when it was launched in only one color. It felt very much like an experimental, we're giving this a go type product. But now with all the additional colors and stuff, it feels like a mainstream product. It feels like we're all in on this. Here you go. Here's the product. So I think that's pretty good. Regarding 5G, a lot of people will ask me about this. I haven't had confirmation that it does have 5G, but I've also haven't had confirmation that it doesn't. The chip technically supports it, but it's an additional chip on the motherboard. So it's not built into the system on a chip, which means Microsoft may have to move some things around internally to get 5G into the device, which is why I'm leaning on it doesn't have 5G. If I had to put money in it, I'd say it doesn't, but we'll have to wait and see. Walking Cat reckons that there is a Surface event happening October 1st. I've heard very similar. Early October is what I've been told. And by events, I think it's just blog posts more than an actual event. I don't think there's going to be a live stream or anything because there's really not a lot being announced. It's the 12.5-inch Surface laptop, Surface Pro X, and accessories. Those accessories include a new Bluetooth keyboard, a Bluetooth number pad, a 4K wireless display adapter, I believe, and a wireless ergonomic mouse, similar to the Precision mouse, but cheaper. And I believe that's it. Perhaps some new type covers. Oh, again, I guess that ties into the Surface Pro X, the new type covers for the Pro X, which will be in available different colors as well. And that's basically it.
Do they have matching pens?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would hope so, but I don't know.
Because that would be magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, the Pro X is my baby. That's my favorite Surface to date, next to Duo. Duo's right up there. Those are the only two devices I would, if my house was on fire, Pro X, Duo.
And the cat, of course.
Of course, I said devices, yeah. And my pile of watches. But yeah, so but I'm very excited. Like the idea of platinum, as you rightly pointed out, black is great, but it was a fingerprint magnet. If they go platinum, it's going to look better. I do like platinum a lot. Different color keyboards, it's just going to make it pop a little bit more. Because the Pro X right now is a pretty business device. It's black with a black keyboard. They can spice it up with a red keyboard and the platinum. I mean, that's going to just look awesome, right? So I'm very excited about this. And Sparty, I think, has so much potential. It's going to be a fun device to cover. Yeah. And yeah, it's going to be a good fall for this stuff.
So yeah, regarding what we're not hearing, will be announced. Surface Pro 8, Surface Laptop 4, Surface Studio 3. All of these devices were originally considered for this event earlier in the year, but considering the current global pandemic and the economy, Microsoft has decided to postpone those products because, one, they are premium devices, especially the Studio, and it might be a bit tone deaf to release a $4,000 desktop PC in the current climate. So they've decided to postpone those to a later date. I'm hearing early 2021. I assume spring, could be earlier than that. But we are expecting a Surface Laptop 4 with, I guess, AMD Ryzen 4000 chips, a Surface Pro 8 with Intel 11th gen processors, and likely a design very similar to the Surface Pro X. I'd be surprised if it looks like the Surface Pro 7. We've been hearing for a long time now that there is a Surface Pro design refresh on the horizon. It was supposed to be announced in 2019. I think they postponed it to 2020, and now they're postponing it to 2021. There's no rush on those products anyway. They're the sort of the bread and butter of the Surface family. They don't need to be updated all the time. So that's no big deal there. The Studio 3 I know the least about, unfortunately. I don't really know what's going to be inside it, or I don't know if there's any hardware or design changes to it. I just know that it's something that they are planning to release in 2021.
It's going to have a 9th gen Intel processor.
Right.
a GTX 1070
Yeah. Oh, good. Thanks,
plus,
Microsoft. That's great.
and that's it. That's it. That's
Yeah.
all it's now.
And it's got
Um,
bigger bezels than the second version. I don't know how they
right.
did it.
So mean. We are so mean. All right, let's go on to some other news quickly. TikTok, TikTok. Right. So this is the last time you'll ever hear us talk about TikTok, probably on this podcast. The Microsoft deal has fallen through. This
Uh-oh.
came out. This came out Sunday night. As I was enjoying my Sunday at home, getting ready to watch 90 Day Fiance. Don't judge me; it's a great show. Um, that's what I do on Sundays. Uh, and then all of a sudden, this story broke, and then another one, which I'll mention after this. But we don't know the full details outside that TikTok rejected Microsoft's bid. And Microsoft kind of wanted the whole kind of company, or at least the controlling share. They wanted the algorithm, they wanted the back end stuff. They needed to control everything in order to secure it and be able to say, we have this. This isn't like some Chinese spyware thing that's going to do anything to you. And TikTok was like, yeah, that sounds too aggressive. That's what it sounds like. And so they backed away from it. And of all companies, it looks like it's Oracle that's going to get it, which is so, like, if you thought Microsoft was weird, Oracle is weirder. Like, they have no consumer facing products, no business in social networks. Yeah, make fun of Microsoft for social networks. They own LinkedIn, they own Skype, they own GitHub. Those are big social networks that are actually pretty successful. At least LinkedIn and GitHub are. Skype is failing, but like Oracle has got nothing. And so it's so bizarre that they're in this. But apparently they're going to be doing a thing where it's only 20% of the company. They don't get access to the algorithm. They don't have to control. So their stake in this is going to be a lot smaller. I think Walmart is jumping in with Oracle now because Walmart is so thirsty to be hip with the kids that they'll do anything. Now the problem is this deal hasn't been approved yet. It seems very unlikely China is even going to allow this to happen because China basically said, you can't just take our company that is making us billions of dollars because that's kind of messed up. And it really is messed up. A lot of Microsoft employees internally were against this idea, not because they didn't think they could handle it or it would have been a good fit, because of the optics of it, that they were going to get the control of a company because the U.S. government threatened that company that we're going to put you out of business unless you sell to us. That's a really bad precedent. And it's a hand grenade. And so I get why Microsoft employees were against it. Now it's in Oracle's court. But I don't think China is going to allow this to go through. And just breaking today, the Trump administration is banning TikTok starting Sunday and WeChat. So you won't be able to download the apps anymore. And then they're going to get like fully banned like November 12th. Like, so they'll continue to operate, but the experience is supposedly going to start to degrade. And by November 12th, it'll be, unless something happens with this Oracle thing. So maybe the end of TikTok as we know it.
So
which
I guess I have a political question for you, which I realize is dangerous to tread into, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Since when were governments allowed to just ban apps on platforms? Like, why is that allowed? What happens if Apple says no?
It's not. So here's the irony of that. There is one country, actually probably two, that has precedent. There's actually probably three or four that has precedent for banning apps for users in its country. That's China, Iran, North Korea, probably Cuba at one point, although Cuba is kind of cool now. Basically all the dictatorships and all the terrible countries out there, they're the ones who do this. So I've been to China twice now. Yeah, you can't use Twitter. You can't use Google. All these things, you can get around them, but you can't use them. And so it is weird that the United States is taking this position of we're going to ban apps, because that's not the American way. The American way is,
land of the freedom, isn't it? Land of the free.
Right. That's the irony right now. We have half this country right now is like, I'm not wearing a mask. Screw you, my freedom. And, but then it's like, but then the government is coming in and telling you can't use this app anymore because we're going to block it. And people are like, well, that's China. You can't use a video app that shows kids dancing. Like, why is that okay? But the mask thing, it's all messed up in this country right now. It's a little crazy. I think this is all, and now you got me all wired up. If this does happen, do you think China is just going to be like, cool, we just lost one of our biggest companies that had the most potential to the United States over a political move? That's fine. Let's just move on. Or maybe, just maybe, China may want to also strike back and do something to a United States company, maybe ban some even more, right? So I don't know. This is sort of like a really dangerous thing, I think. I'm a little worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's that.
Sorry.
Let's talk about what else do we have today? PS5 and Xbox pricing. So obviously we had the Xbox pricing last week, $299 for the Xbox Series S, $499 for the Xbox Series X. But the puzzle is now complete, as Sony has also announced pricing for its consoles. The PS5 All Digital Edition is starting at $399, and the PS5 Standard Edition is starting at $499, which means Sony has technically undercut the Xbox Series X by $100, but then Microsoft came in and undercut the PS5 by another $100 with the Xbox Series S. Now, the concern I have for this is, yes, technically Xbox has the lowest costing next generation console. But in terms of raw power, the PS5 and Series X are much closer together. Buying a Series S compared to a PS5 isn't really a fair comparison compared to buying a PS5 to the Series X. I think that's a way more fairer comparison. I worry that although the PS5 is technically a little bit less powerful, it being $100 cheaper means it's the go-to de facto choice for gamers deciding between the two consoles. You save $100, it's basically as powerful as an Xbox Series X, plus you get all the PS5 exclusives and whatever else Sony offers that Xbox doesn't have. And, you know, I feel like Microsoft should price match the Series X with the PS5 Digital Edition. A lot of people said, no, they don't need to do that, it's fine, whatever. But if Microsoft really wants to move hardware, I think they need to be as cutthroat as possible, and I do think they should drop the Series X price by $100, at least for the pre-order period or something, just so that they can compete. Because I feel like the PS5, even without the disc drive, I feel like that is a better deal. It's a better sell at $399 than the Series X is at $499 with a disc drive, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's this is a tough thing to figure out in terms of pricing. Like now we're hearing, because the price of a disc for the Sonys is like up to $70.
Right.
Should Microsoft bump their price up? I don't know who would agree to that. Like, even if you think it makes business sense as a consumer, I can't imagine like, yeah, charge me $10 more for a physical disc.
So the thinking is the reason Sony has bumped the price of their disc-based games is because of the digital version. Since if you're buying a digital version, is it digital version? Is that $70 now, or disc versions? I can't remember which. Let's just assume they're all $70. They're all $70 now on the PlayStation. I believe they're doing this because they're losing money on the $399 console. So they have to make up that money elsewhere. They're going to do that with PlayStation Plus and charging an extra $10 on game sales. Xbox hasn't done this. I believe games are still $60 on Xbox Series X, and that's because the consoles are being sold at, I don't think they're selling at a loss on the Xbox side. But if Microsoft were to match the PS5 digital edition with the Series X at $399, then they would be making a loss on the Series X. And then that calls into question whether Microsoft needs to up the price of their games to sort of make up for that loss. So the question I have for you, Dan, and I guess to people listening is, would you rather Microsoft price match the PS5 but up the price of games, or keep the $499 price and keep games at $60? Which is the better buy? Which is the better strategy for Microsoft to go with?
It's so tough. So there's so many caveats to this. For instance, like even the $499 price tag will probably go on sale, for the holidays, right? They're going to drop the price, and there'll be bundles and all this kind of stuff. But you got to say the same thing about physical games. Now, physical games, or even digital, I mean, there is no difference in pricing right now, I don't think, between digital and physical. I think that's always been one of the sticking points that people don't understand, which is like, sometimes you can get the physical still cheaper than the digital, which is always mind-blowing. And the physical, of course, you can resell, whereas the digital, you can't. So it's like, the whole industry is kind of screwy. But at least when games come out, they're never on sale, right? They're always the full price unless it bombs, and then it like gets an immediate price drop, just like a movie theater, right? So I don't know. Now, most people, and this is industry statistics, most people are only buying 2 like AAA titles a year. So they're not like, buying a new game every month. So the $20, so it's, if you think about that, it's like $20 of savings or $20 price difference versus the 100 on the console. I don't know if that totally equals, so
that
I don't know.
said, if Microsoft were to drop $100 and up the price of the game sales, Microsoft still has Game Pass, and I think a lot of gamers could get away with just subscribing to Game Pass and having those 100 games for air quotes free anyway, and never having to buy a game ever. Don't get me wrong, of course, with the AAA titles that aren't Xbox Game Studios, you will have to buy them if you want to play them. But how many people are buying AAA titles? I assume most of them, but I don't know what the market's like for console set gamers. But yeah, it is going to be interesting. I think Microsoft is having this conversation internally right now. If Microsoft is going to price match the PS5, they will have to announce it by Tuesday, because that's when the console goes up for pre-order. So we'll have to wait and see. I think they'll probably stick at $4.99 now. I think Microsoft, although console sales are nice, I don't think Microsoft are hell-bent on sales anymore of the hardware. I think they know that their money is to be made in the services, and that's why they sell you Game Pass, and that's why Xbox is available in all access. You can subscribe to it, you can get the hardware, and you get Game Pass for 24 months, and don't have to think about it for $25 or $35 a month.
Yeah, it's I don't know how to figure that out. It's sort of like, rationally speaking, I'd rather pay more for the console and get cheaper games, because the problem I have right now with games is that they are expensive. Like, you have to now, like, if a brand new AAA title comes out, it's $60 or even now $70, right? That's not a point of purchase sale, right? That's not like you're in Best Buy and it's buy the candy and you're like, oh, let me just grab that. That is a $70 investment. You're going to go home, you're going to watch IGN videos, you're going to go to Windows Central, you're going to hear what Jez says, and you're going to like see what everybody's saying. You have to put time and research in and really decide, is that your genre? Is that something you want? Yeah. And it's like, because once you buy it, you bought it, right? It's kind of hard. Like, you could sell it off, but it's a commitment to once you get that game. Whereas I feel like with the console, you get the console, then it's just like you have all these games you can choose from. It's not as worrisome. But the thing is when you go to the store, you don't think like that. You think $3.99, there's the cheaper console. I'm just going to get that because I'll probably like that Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
In which case,
that's what I'm saying. I feel like the PS5 at $3.99 is the better sell, because one, it's $3.99, and two, you do have the PlayStation exclusives, which Xbox doesn't have. So in a lot of people's eyes, with the Xbox Series X, you're paying $100 more for less games, but for a bit more power. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm a Series X guy. I'm buying the Series X. That's my console of choice, and I'm sure it's a lot of people's consoles of choice who are listening to this right now. I'm not saying it's a bad console. I'm saying for the 15-year-old who is in GameStop looking at which one to buy, I feel like the PS5 is the better choice for that kid. I don't know. I just don't know.
It's true. Oh, well, we'll figure it out. We'll see what happens this holiday season. I honestly, this is a story I barely followed. Maybe I'll get a PlayStation 5. I don't really know. I don't care. I know they're already having problems with yields and production, and they're going to be very hard to find. No different than the RTX 3080 already. So I feel like this is a decision I'll probably make in 2021. But I barely play video games as it is. That said, I just did buy Hades, which is out on Steam now for $20, which is getting rave reviews. So there's my game recommendation of the week. I still, though, have to get back to playing Control, which, again, this is Dan Gaming. I played Control for about an hour or two, and I was like, this is amazing. Then I put it down, and I haven't touched it in a week. So I'm just bad at this stuff. This is why I'm not a gamer. But So be it. All right, I think that should wrap us up for the podcast as an hour and 40 minutes, long time. But hopefully you enjoyed all the content. As always, we're doing the live Q&A now, so if you have questions, start firing them off. Otherwise, this is where the podcast ends. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. Also on Instagram, where I'll be showing, of course, all my Surface Duo stuff as I go through that, as well as you can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN, where he often spills little secrets and tidbits about stuff we talk about in this podcast that don't get onto the front page of Windows Central for a few days later. So it's always a good sneak peek at what's coming. As always, thanks for listening. You can join us Fridays, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, youtube.com and Windows Central. Join a live chat there. Other than that, we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
I can't remember. Did Fisher clap sync with us?
He did.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah, we did do the countdown. I mean, I assumed he clapped.
Because I don't know if he did. We didn't tell him we were going to clap sync.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Not my problem.
All right, questions. Have you got questions for us? I've got to hang around for about 10 minutes because we're already over time. And then I've got to head off because it's 9:30 and it's obscene that I'm still working at 9:30 on a Friday.
Wow, I just realized we're 190. We're almost on our 200th episode.
I know, we've got to do something special. When it was, so it,
a 20,
96 today?
A 20-minute podcast.
Yeah, 97, 98, 99. So it'll be October 16th will be our 200th. October 16th. Any chance of Microsoft shipping Office UWP apps with Windows 10X? They can still offer the shimmed Win32 version for Microsoft 365 users. Yes, except I don't think they'll be the UWP apps. I think Microsoft are actually planning to update the UWP apps as web apps, or at the very least React Native apps. But I believe that is the plan. Yeah, I believe they'll be using the UWP versions on 10X. But we'll have to wait and see. At least that was the plan originally. It's been a long time since I checked. But back before 10X was announced, as when it was back as Santorini Windows Lite, the plan was to use the UWP apps, but as web apps for Office. How are you finding the Duo now that you have it? I love this thing. I was always going to love this thing, so me saying I love it is kind of irrelevant. But I love it. I think it's great. It's my favorite phone ever. I think it's the best phone ever. I'm glad it exists. It is fantastic. I mean, if I could be in love with a piece of hardware, I'd be in love with this hardware.
I keep checking for app updates. This is my life now. It's like,
I don't know why.
Google
I
just
can't believe that they do not service the Microsoft launcher through the Play Store. That to me is obscene, and they need to change that.
Yeah, it's weird. If you go to the store, it shows it's installed.
Yeah. And it says, but it says, this is not compatible with your device, which is ridiculous. I bet, you know what? I'm going to try and sideload the Microsoft launcher later and see if the latest version works on it. I bet it does.
Google's app is not updated for dual screens.
Zach, why was there a peak mode button? Does this mean that they tried to motorize the hinges as well? So he's referring to some of the Andromeda prototypes. On some of the Andromeda prototypes, I think it was the fingerprint button. I could be wrong on that. It could be another button. But there was a button on the device where if you pressed it, the device would snap open to peak mode. Like that, or like that. And it was just sort of quick access to opening it so you could see the time and date and your missed notifications in that sort of semi-closed position like this. It wasn't I don't believe it was a motorized hinge. I believe it worked with magnets. What the button did was flip a magnet, which pushed the device open a little bit. Because the Duo is all about magnets. There's magnets all over this thing, and if there's a magnet that can flip inside of it, then that can cause the negative effect and push the magnets away from each other. And I believe that's what it was doing. I'm not 1000% sure on that. That's what one source has described to me how it works, but that's what I've heard.
Daniel, do you find while using Surface earbuds for hands-free calling that hearing your voice is a bit annoying? I do always find my voice annoying. Sorry, and I know other people find my voice annoying too. I apologize. As far as using the earbuds, I haven't really taken many calls with them in there. I don't use them primarily like that, so I really can't comment on it. I think I know what you're talking about, in the sense that because you're not putting a phone up to your ear. But I don't really feel like this is any different. I think it's weird in general to be on a phone call using hands-free device, no matter the headphones you're using. I don't feel like if I had occluded my ears, that would be any better, because then you couldn't really hear your voice for feedback. You actually need to hear yourself talk to speak. It's a well-known phenomenon. That's why you can actually, there's like software you can buy, or you can try it on Android too, where it basically plays noise that when you talk, it counters your voice, and it kind of scrambles your brain. And so I feel like you do need to hear your voice when you talk. So it probably wouldn't bother me too much. But I find hands-free weird in general. So
will we ever get a Surface wearable? Would pair great with the Duo and negate the desire for an external notification light and meditate peak mode. We are not aware of any plans to release a wearable. We don't even know if Microsoft is working one. We assume they are because Microsoft is working on everything all the time. But as far as we're aware, we don't know anything about a wearable Surface from Microsoft.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like sometimes I look for hints in what Panos says. He was talking about how when you have Duo and you close it, you're kind of like focused on what you're doing. But he did criticize people with smartwatches a little bit, because you can be in a conversation with someone, and then we've talked about this. So you're talking, and then they go and they look at their watch because they have a message coming in, or they start interacting. And he says like that moment breaks that concentration you have, that connection you have with that person, and they have to refocus on you and kind of catch back up to where they were. And to me, it sounded like he wasn't a fan of that thing. What that means for how he would make a wearable, I have no idea, because it's kind of, you'd almost argue the point of a wearable is to disrupt you, to break you out of your flow. And so I wonder if he would be against actually doing a wearable because of that, or he would think of a way to solve for that, which that's a hard problem to solve. I wouldn't even know. But that's what makes them, right? And the Surface team, they're always coming up with new ideas for things that none of us would immediately try to solve for. This is why I hate when people are like, oh, Surface Duo solves a problem that doesn't exist. That's not what they do. But how would they kind of solve for this? So I don't know if they would do that. That's where Microsoft Band was kind of cool, because Band did have the ability to look on your inside wrist. It was a different gesture that wasn't as offensive, I would think, as doing this whole gesture, but who knows?
Do you think it's feasible to release Jamdani, the Microsoft Whiteboard, as a Duo app? I mean, I'm surprised the Whiteboard app isn't available on Android already. It's on iOS and it's on the web, but it's just not on Android. I think it's so weird. Yeah, I mean, they could release it as an app. I don't think you would ever see it as the home screen experience, though. I think Microsoft are hell-bent on trying to make this as Android-y as possible. So it'll always be sort of the Microsoft launcher on Duo.
Does Daniel want to show off a different watch he has? Zach knows the answer. Of course I do.
Zach, how likely is 11th gen Intel chips in the Pro 8? I figured with the prior Intel burns, they would be more conservative about recent release silicon. Well, they have pushed this back to 2021, so I think they are waiting. I mean, the 11th gen's out now, right? Or it's about to be out. So yeah, they're going to give it some time. I believe Intel, I believe they've been prototyping the Pro 8 with 11th gen for a while now anyway, so they should be aware if there's any major concerns. But they're postponing to 2021 either way, so this isn't an issue for the customer.
Yeah, I'm confident they will ship with 11th gen, which is going to be huge. The 11th gen, the stuff. We didn't really talk about that this week. We should have, but some sites got a preview device with the processor on there, and it's, don't count Intel out. Those Xe graphics are damn serious. Like the 11th gen stuff is going to be a big shift in performance, and having those kind of graphics into a Surface Pro, I think is going to be kind of game changing. So I know everybody's rooting for AMD, and I think AMD is doing very well, but Intel is not out. This 11th gen stuff actually seems to be pretty significant. So,
excuse me. As we approach Duo 2 release, do you think the software updates for Duo 1 will approach Duo 2's experience? So obviously I don't know how far out. It's that's so far out we don't know. But I have been told that Microsoft, at least the Surface team working on the Android stuff, do want to have sort of feature parity between in the software experiences, unless it requires new hardware to function. I think the server team want to kind of deliver the same experiences across older generations of the Duo and newer generations of the Duo. That could change, of course, but that's what I've heard so far.
Dan, do you have a preference between the Surface Buds colors that you have? I think they're both great, but I'm very gray today. This matches very well. So actually, if I had to choose one, I would go for the dark gray.
I can't stop yawning now. It's time to go, I think. Can you change the launcher on the Duo from the Microsoft launcher to the Nova launcher, for example? You can change it to any launcher you want. It's an Android device. But that does not mean that you'll get a good experience because of the dual screen nature of the device. Most, if not all, launchers are not compatible with spanning or doing sort of taking advantage of this dual screen. So you'll get weird issues and animation lag and other stuff.
Do you know anything about your phone's apps feature coming to Duo? I imagine it will. We don't have confirmation.
Yeah,
I think though.
They updated the supported list. So the page is weirdly split up. On the your phone supported list, it has your phone supported devices list. It has your phone screen mirroring supported list, and it has your phone apps feature supported list. And the Duo is on the first two. But not the apps bit. They've distinctly not included the Surface Duo in that third list. I have a feeling it's because Samsung agreed to some sort of exclusivity deal, and hopefully it's timed. But
I don't think that's the case. It could be, but what I think is up is that's a feature I think that's going to be dependent on the firmware, and I think they're going to need to do.
Yeah, actually,
we're going to have to get one of those monthly updates. It's going to be needed. So it's not going to be something that comes through the store.
I'll tell you what it is. I know exactly what it is. So right now, that feature only works with one app at a time. And you know what the Duo's main concern is that it's all about two apps. So the problem is, right now, the Duo although it's two screens, it treats it as one display. If you take a screenshot, even with only one screen active, it will take a screenshot of both screens. Because Android thinks that it's one full large canvas. It's not seen as two separate displays in the software. So if you were to use the apps feature, what would happen is you'd have the big window, whereas one side of it is an app and then the other side is just the home screen. So they need to work on that. I think that's why it's not on the Duo yet.
Yeah, so that's my guess too. I think they're definitely going to bring those features over, but I think Zach's right. They're going to have to do some. Even they are planning on fixing the screenshot feature, from what I understand.
Yep, I know.
But it's going to take some fidgeting. That said, your phone with Duo and other devices this week did get the contacts preview and send from phone in preview. So it is getting a lot of the new features. It just doesn't have it's on phone screen. And also the performance isn't as good. The Samsung still performs a little bit better. But again, I think that's going to be when we get those monthly updates, that's where you'll start to see the real hardcore your phone improvements. So all eyes on that to see what happens next month.
Other than a better processor, what would be the number one item to be added to Duo 2? For me, it would be NFC or wireless charging. I'd also like to see a better camera, but I do not want them to add an external camera bump. If they can add a better camera without ruining the outside aesthetic, I'm all for it. But I don't know. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I agree there. They can't. It would be nice to have a flush camera on the back.
Yeah.
If they can do that, even if it's not, if it's a better camera than the front, just having that ability just to turn it on and immediately have it aimed at your subject would be a lot better. That's a tough one. In terms, I want more RAM. I think it should have at least 8 gigs.
I agree. Yep.
And of course, the latest processor, but that's less of a big deal. NFC, I don't care, but if they can shoehorn it in, sure. And Qi wireless, I don't care. Those are features I won't ever be mad that they're there, but they're not features I necessarily use every time either. I wouldn't mind. Qi wireless would be pretty cool, but I mean, it's kind of funny. Actually, I have it. Where is it? I actually have the. I don't know where I put it now. My desk is a disaster. Did it fall off? Oh. So this right here is actually a third-party Qi thing, Qi coil with a USB Type-C. And so you could plug it into Surface Duo and then get yourself Qi wireless. But here's where the problem is. First of all, if you can see, because it's off center with the Type-C, technically it hangs over the edge. I've actually physically trimmed the Qi charger because there was dead space in it. And so now it actually would line up. So I could get like a third-party skin and put on top. But this device is so thin, that Qi cable, it's not trivial. Like if you were to put a skin down and really mat this down, it would still add a bump to the back. And the problem is now when you reverse open this, you're going to block and you're going to get that wedge effect again and strain the hinge. So,
it's funny.
And that's just on the outside. I'm saying
I was
the
literally
inside
just mentioning to Dan before the show started, like if you take a closer look at the hardware, you won't be able to see it on the camera, I don't think. But this thing is fighting for space so much that the glass on the outside of the device is ever so slightly raised. You can actually sort of like see into the device, and you can actually put your fingernail under it, which is one of the reasons why it has no water resistance. This device really is fighting for space, and the glass on the outside is just sort of like just stuck on the front as best it possibly can be.
Yeah, it's there's a huge challenge if they want to jam Qi into that and more sensors or bigger camera.
I can't imagine that the second version isn't thicker. If it's like a millimeter or 0.0 thicker.
I bet it isn't, because they were so.
I know they
were. They consider the perfect form. I think they're going to have to wait on the chipsets to shrink down, and they can combine components to shrink down stuff. It's the same with the problem with 5G and the 865, right? Mm-hmm. Does the 865 have 5G built into it? I think that's the issue. Or it's a separate chip. I think it's a separate chip, but it's like, I don't know, I forgot what it is. But these are like real problems they have to kind of contend with. So, can the Duo put out a video signal over USB dongle? Yeah, if you plug this by Type-C to a monitor, you're going to get a double wide Android screen on your computer. You throw a mouse on it and a keyboard, you basically have a kind of a dual screen Android phone that's a computer. So you can tell it's almost like a form of continuum. And it actually works pretty well. Like you can span apps and move apps around with a mouse. Like I was going to do a post on this, because if you have a foldable keyboard and foldable mouse and this thing, it's like a little portable computer. It's actually pretty neat. But I was using it yesterday. I set it up with it vertically, and I had Word on the top screen where I was writing a document, and I had like YouTube live TV on the bottom. So it was like watching TV while typing. So yeah, you can do all this and put it onto a monitor and everything.
Zach, you deserve a Pulitzer for that Andromeda to Surface article. An exemplary piece that shows how Windows Central can write thorough and compelling stories of Microsoft devices that run Android. Thank you so much, Darkson34. That's so kind of you. Surface Neo 2021 and 2022. So Windows 10 X is currently scheduled for 2022. Let me rephrase that. Windows 10 X on dual screen devices is currently scheduled for 2022, spring 2022, which in theory means the Neo can't launch until then. But who knows? The schedules are fluid and they can be brought forward if necessary. So we could see a Neo at the end of 2021, but we'll have to wait.
With Android. No, I'm just kidding. Do you think D-brand skins are still in pre-order because they are trying to fix the issue you talked about earlier? I do think that, because I have a bunch of D-brand skins. They sent them to me, and they're awesome. I like them because they're really easy to install. They're also easy to remove, which is cool too. But there is this issue with them being thick, so they may be trying to thin them out, because I think they're a little bit concerned with Microsoft. But yeah, I kind of feel like they may be trying to address this before it becomes a problem. They don't want to be called out and like people buying their skins and then their duos are breaking, and like that's something they want to avoid. But I don't know officially if that's the reason. I just know like Soapy Guard, that's not Soapy Box, but Soapy Guard, they're already shipping. They said screw it, I guess, and they're going ahead with their thicker ones. But Dbrand's a bigger, more well-known brand that most people feel safe going with. So yeah, it could be.
Jason's in the chat. Assuming this is the real Jason, North Face Hiker. Hello. Thanks for joining us. I fear Neo is a 2K device. Well, I would agree. I think it will. I think it will be a very expensive device.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. I mean, I think it would be a mistake to price these devices lower because a lower price puts you in a position where you can be criticized by a wider audience. Whereas like these experimental form factors, I think them being expensive is good because it means grandma doesn't go out and buy one. If grandma went out and bought this, I think she'd have a terrible time. But because it's $1,400, she's not even going to even think about considering this. I think the higher price, at least for Gen 1 products, it sort of makes sense. And I think Neo will be very much a Gen 1 product, and it being $2,000 does not surprise me in the slightest, especially when you consider the Surface Studio, which is $4,000, which is absolutely not worth it in any sense. But it's $4,000 anyway. So Microsoft can get away with it because these are low volume products anyway, so they don't really care if only a few people buy them because they've forecasted that internally anyway.
What was the Dbrand issue? I missed that. It's basically if you put external skins on Duo, it's such a tightly designed device that when you reverse flip the screens, it prevents it from closing completely flush, and you can force it. It feels kind of fine, but no one knows the long-term effect that might have on the hinge because it doesn't seem like a very delicate device, but this is all new territory. So it's I know Microsoft doesn't seem to be a fan of the idea of people doing this because they too don't know and they can't guarantee that's not going to damage the device. So I think Dbrand might be a little bit more cautious here. And I kind of hope they are. They're a fun company, and their skins are pretty awesome. So hopefully they do figure something out there. But it's a tough device to design accessories for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole new, but we are seeing it, right? I did review the Kensington case this week. We have more on the way. I'm sure we'll see some creative, solutions to things here, but it's going to take a little while. So.
Yeah. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will be back next Friday, as always. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we're going live and all that good stuff. But until then, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.